So I'm Father Tom. I'm one of the assistant priests here at St. Constantine and Helen, and this is the St. Constantine and Helen Cathedral. Technically it's a cathedral, but we don't actually have the bishop here on a regular basis. The bishop is in Pittsburgh. But this is the church. This is, I think, the second church in Cleveland, second Greek Orthodox church after Annunciation downtown.
Father, what year was it built, you know?
I think this was, the foundation I believe was laid in 1956.
Yeah, I thought it.
When it was finished, I don't know. We always have the Virgin Mary and Jesus and John the Baptist. Those three are set. We, generally speaking, have, this is actually the Annunciation, the Bonum Annunciato. Evangelismos, which is actually the translation of the word gospel. So the gospel, the beginning of the good news, is actually the incarnation of Jesus. That's always there on the royal doors. And then this icon is always dedicated to the saint who is the patron of the church, or if it's a church that's dedicated to, say, a feast of Jesus, this would be the icon of that feast. So in the liturgy itself, there's a point at which we sing a hymn honouring the saints to whom the church is dedicated. So that would vary from church to church. Here it's Saints Constantine and Helen, so that's the hymn we sing. When you go to St. Nicholas, it's the hymn to St. Nicholas. But basically, those hymns fall at exactly the same place in the liturgy. So basically, the liturgy is exactly the same. Even with the icons, I should mention this. Why do we have so many icons? Part of it is that people forget that for the vast majority of the history of Christianity, the vast majority of Christians were actually illiterate. And so it's all very well for us in the 21st century now to say, yeah, just go home and read your Bible. Bibles were extremely expensive because they were actually written on parchment, and parchment is like lambskin. And I don't even want to speak about how many animals it takes to make one gospel book or one Bible, but it's a lot. Wow. So it's a very expensive process. There was papyrus, and so some of the earliest fragments we've got, if you like, of the New Testament are written on papyrus, but as it says, fragments. Papyrus is not very strong, and it breaks and it doesn't last. And so, anyway, it's an expensive process and it wouldn't be very useful for the majority of people. So the only way, in a sense, to bring these stories to memory is to depict them and to act them out, so to speak, in liturgy. So in a sense, our liturgy is also a commemoration of the entire life of Jesus. From birth, death and sacrifice to resurrection.
Tell us something about St. Constantine and something about St. Helen.
So St. Constantine is actually the first Christian Roman emperor. And he became Christian in about 306. And his mother Helen actually became Christian because of his influence. A lot of people actually think, as I did for a long time, that his mother was the reason that he became Christian, but it's actually the other way around. So he had this vision of Jesus. He had been proclaimed emperor in Britain and was marching on Rome because a usurper who was not supposed to be the emperor of Rome had occupied Rome and proclaimed himself emperor. And Constantine decided that he was going to kick this guy out of Rome. And on the way from Britain to Rome, he had a vision. He had actually two visions. One of which was Jesus saying, I think there was a cross involved, saying, "In this sign conquer." And so when he actually got to Rome, he had no idea who Jesus was, mind you, so he had to find some local Christians who were brave enough to actually say to the Roman emperor, "Yes, I'm Christian, I'll come explain Christianity to you." Which, at that point, this was actually the height of the Decian or the Diocletian persecution, so this was actually, very brave of them. But these priests, I believe they were from Gaul, actually met with Constantine and explained who Jesus was, and he had no idea who it was that he'd seen, except that I can't remember exactly, but somehow he knew it was Jesus. I think he says, "I'm Jesus," similar to the story of Paul. And he asks these people who Jesus is, what's going on with this. So they explain the gospel to him, and then when he gets to Rome, he has not exactly the cross. He has this Chi-Rho. Now in Greek, the Chi-Rho, the X and the P it looks like, these are actually the first two letters of the word Christos, or the name Christos. And so he had this emblazoned on the shields and the helmets and basically all of the equipment of his army. And that's what he took that to mean in this sign, conquer. I think there was also a cross involved at the top of the P somehow, but I can't remember it. It's actually depicted on a lot of Roman coins from that period, so it's not mystery as to what it looked like, but anyway. So he actually marched upon Rome, and interestingly, I can't remember the name of the emperor. It was Maximilian, there were so many Maxes at that point, I think. He also was told by somebody that there would be a great victory on the following day. And so he was convinced by this person that the victory was going to be his, and so he left the safety of Rome and went out of Rome to confront Constantine's army. And well, this is why it's called Constantinople and not whatever the name of that other guy is. That guy lost and Constantine won, and I'm not sure that anybody had successfully marched against Rome before. Hi, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you? You're Irish.
I'm Australian.
What are you doing in the Greek faith?
I'm the priest, I have to be.
That's beautiful.
So Helen was his mother, and she became extremely well known for her generosity and her building of churches and giving money to the poor, building orphanages, all of that sort of thing. And so she is famous for also discovering the cross. So there's a great story about that actually. The Christians, we all know this from Rome in particular. Christians are, even from the earliest times, often associate sites, places, with holy events, right? And so the places where the apostles were martyred, where early other Romans were martyred, became places that were considered holy, right? And even before they built churches on top of these sites, Christians in the catacombs in Rome were meeting at these sites, right? So when we're talking about the Christians in Jerusalem, what is the holiest site that is imaginable?
His burial. Where he was
It's the place where he was buried and the place where he resurrected.
Right.
And it's inconceivable, in my mind anyway, that they would forget where this place was. And so the Christians, even under the persecution of both the Jews and the Romans, would continually try to meet at the site of Jesus' death and resurrection. So the Romans, in order to stop this, built a Roman temple on top of the site.
Oh, I remember this, yes.
And I can't remember, I think it was Aphrodite, I can't remember who it was dedicated to. But either way, they tried to bury Christianity, so to speak, and all they did is, mark the spot with a big giant X, if you like, which was the temple.
Right.
So, centuries after, everybody was able to remember where it was that Jesus was buried and where he rose, because the temple of Aphrodite was still there. So Constantine, being the Roman emperor, said, okay, let's just tear that temple down and dig around and see what you can find underneath it. And they found the cave where he was buried. They found the crosses that had just been discarded because it was outside the walls of Jerusalem at the time. It was a dump, it was a trash heap. But they found the cross there. They found 3 crosses there. And
Because he was buried here with Lazarus and another criminal.
not with Lazarus.
No.
Just I don't know if he was buried with the other criminals.
I'm sorry, no.
He was crucified with
I
them.
meant to say crucified.
Yeah, he was crucified with 2 other criminals.
Right.
I don't know where they were buried.
No.
Generally speaking, the practice of the Romans was to leave them on their crosses
So the vultures would eat
The
them.
vultures would eat them. Yeah, that's why in the Old Testament there's this curse that birds will eat your flesh and wild animals, particularly dogs, will eat your flesh.
They were so brutal.
Because, if there's nobody around to bury you, this
Yeah.
is what happens.
Right. And
Yeah.
wasn't Constantine pagan till she prayed for her son for like 50 years? And then
This
he
is
was
the
first
common
martyr?
story, but it's actually the other way around.
Oh, I'm wrong.
Constantine has this vision of Jesus who says to him, shows him Jesus is with the cross, and he says, "In this sign conquer." And so Constantine is converted sometime between 306 and 312, because I can't remember the dates exactly. And then he converts his mother. And a lot of people are very cynical about Constantine. They don't think of him as holy. And yet nobody questions the holiness of Helen. She was so famous for being holy and looking after the poor and the weak and the downtrodden, and giving money to orphanages and building churches and building all of these things to help, Christians and the poor. Nobody doubted her holiness, her sanctity, and yet she's convinced to become a Christian because of Constantine.
Isn't that
Yeah.
fascinating?
And we know this because there were so many things written about Constantine by people at the time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See ya.
Thank you.
So it's not like, Constantine is without a doubt one of the most significant people in history.